Warning, this video is the express opinion of Cawthorne Communications Incorporated. Keep in mind this is an individual's opinion on a game and not fact. If you don't agree, that's perfectly valid, just don't be toxic about it. This video contains spoilers for Luigi's Mansion 3. If you haven't played and don't want to hear the entire game's plot prior to your playthrough, please click away from this video. Everyone else, please enjoy the following review.
Have you ever wanted to stay in a haunted hotel? Have you ever wanted to clean with a vacuum that is for some reason assigned to capture ghosts?
Well, congratulations. You're either weird or you're me, the most normal man on the internet. Hello, I'm Calvin Cawthorne. You may know me from the Cawthorne Communications Twitch channel, the link to which is on my YouTube channel page, and the internet corporation that I operate. If not, you will soon. I've been streaming on Twitch for a little while now, almost a year as of writing this review. One day, I had a thought. What if I started making reviews for the games I've managed to complete on stream? Yes, all 2 of them. And today's subject is the 3rd installment of one of my favorite game series. Today we're covering Luigi's Mansion 3. So, what is this game about? Well, Luigi and friends want to stay at a hotel called the Last Resort. Considering that the first game in this series also started with Luigi winning a mansion for a contest he never entered, you'd think Luigi might be hesitant to accept random prizes from strangers, especially when said hotel is run by handsome faces like this.
Now here's a face that just screams confidence. I think I'll talk to you last. Also, you seem very twitchy.
They were invited by this beehive-haired purple lady with the completely innocuous name Helena Gravely. Seriously, The Last Resort, run by Helena Gravely? Luigi, you've been through 2 other games of this. You haven't learned to spot the obvious by now? This hotel might as well have a sign that says, "Ghosts probably live here." I think King Boo said it best when he asked, "What do they feed you, Mario Brothers? Gullible soup?" Anyway, they're all staying in separate rooms because that's typically how real people plan their vacations, apparently. And Luigi attempts to read a book, falling asleep within seconds, presumably because he didn't choose a book that interested him. He hears screams in the night, and suddenly he's wound up in the most gothic-looking hotel I've ever seen. And I unironically would want to stay in that hotel. I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. After blatantly invading everyone else's hotel room to find that Peach was doing her taxes, and Mario had immediately started running up a room service bill somewhere to the tune of 50 grand, you find the Toads managed to disappear without even having unpacked yet. Presumably because they were too busy helping the princess unpack the Mushroom Kingdom's tax code from the many suitcases she brought with her. Anyways, after raiding everyone else's stuff, you go out into the hallway to find that King Boo is back for round 3, after escaping supposedly internal imprisonment. Again. Causing Luigi to courageously run away and throw himself down the laundry chute, where the only reason he didn't die is due to the miracle of cartoon physics. After exploring, Luigi finds the poltergeist in an old car, and the ghosts finally start appearing because they want to make sure Luigi could defend himself before attacking. You eventually come across Professor Egad, inventor of the poltergeist, potential sociopath, and Luigi's ghost hunting mentor. He's stuck in a painting because he too fell for an incredibly obvious trap, in spite of literally prepping for it. Guess we know where Luigi gets it from. Egad has you follow him to the garage, where he deploys the bunker he stays in the entire game, while Luigi does all the work, though he does attempt to send the obviously defenseless Toads to do some of the grunt work later on, unfortunately to no success. You then face the first boss, a poor soul who's been cursed to spend his eternal afterlife in a minimum wage position just trying to do his job. Though, to be fair, eternal imprisonment might be a better fate than an eternity of customer service. And this guy is just the first of many quirky and fun bosses this game throws at you. That's right, we're back to bosses being unique and fun ghosts, rather than having to fight this horny bastard 5 different times. This game's bosses include Muriel from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Paul Blart's dead twin brother, the Swedish chef's French cousin with anger issues, an 18th century composer who couldn't get over living in Mozart's shadow, Macbeth's less successful cousin McFrights, who keeps saying "damn it crabgrass" whenever he takes a hit.
Did he just say damn it?
Poison Ivy's great-grandpappy. A film director trying to make his masterpiece post-mortem. Nicolas Cage, after a disastrous attempt to get into character for the next Croods movie. Clamp. I can't even make fun of this. That's his name, and well, that just kinda sums this guy up. He looks like a clamp. He was also the single
most infuriating boss fight in this game.
The ghost of Universal Studios' hopes for the Dark Universe franchise. Magical Girls from Las Vegas. Captain Hook, after losing an eye and discovering he can anamorph into a shark. A swimmer, who somehow managed to skip leg day. Whitney Houston, who's enjoying running a dance club in her eternal retirement. Helena Gravely, who turns out to be related to the evil queen from Snow White, and has a more than concerning obsession with King Boo. This cat, who forces you to backtrack levels 3
different times.
And of course, King Boo, whose boss fight is timed because he decides to pull a Taking You With Me after you foil his plans. In order to fight these new bosses, and the rest of the dearly departed dunderheads infesting the hotel, you get the brand new Poltergust Goo, which comes with new abilities and attachments for your pleasure, including the ability to engage in macabre metronomic matching, especially useful for when you want to smack a ghost with another ghost. A non-overheating blacklight which should by no means be used in either Mario or Peach's rooms. Super Suction, which, in spite of being part of a ghost-sucking vacuum, never actually gets used on ghosts, and is instead used to cause major property damage. A Burst Attack, for when you just want the ghost to leave you alone. And perhaps in homage to the plumbing profession that we never actually see the Mario Brothers doing, the ability to shoot a plunger, infinitely useful for flinging heavy objects. And last, but certainly not least, Luigi, your personal goopy doppelganger, which I question EGAD's motives for making, especially after certain comments he's made.
They captured me and took my precious ghost collection. Even King Boo, losing him really got under my skin. He's my favorite. Egad, I don't want to ask what you do with your ghosts in your spare time.
Luigi can either be manually controlled by you, or you can invite a friend to play the goopy green guy for you. Luigi has all the abilities of normal Luigi, but at a fraction of the health, a severe allergy to water, and a knack for slipping through grates. Also, he's not optional. It's required in order to progress through the game, through puzzles and even boss fights. Oh, and EGAD took the liberty of converting yet another handheld Nintendo device into a phone. This time it's the Virtual Boy, Nintendo's ill-fated venture into early VR. Now it's called the Virtual Boo. This handy device acts as a map, allows you to track collectibles, and even allows you to talk to EGAD for hints. But, more often than not, it's EGAD calling you to point out the obvious objective, even when you're not working on that objective and are instead trying to find all the gems on the floor you're currently on. I can only think of one time the entire game where EGAD's constant badgering was actually helpful. Also, is it wrong to question why EGAD feels the need to make phones out of outdated handheld consoles? I mean, he already had the Game Boy Horror from the first game, and it had pretty much all the same functions except the warp to bunker function. and even then the dual scream from Luigi's Mansion 2 had that. If anything, the Virtual Boo seems like a step back, since it's not one you'd be able to use and walk around with at the same time. I guess EGAD just wants to make sure that he has your undivided attention when he calls. The ringtone to the Virtual Boo is, however, the best one from all three games. I have no arguments about that. Overall, I really enjoyed playing through Luigi's Mansion 3. It was fun, and compared to Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon, it felt more like an expanded version of the original Luigi's Mansion game for the GameCube, of which my main complaint is that it's far too short. Let's go over the points I liked, and I'll get into a few gripes I have on Luigi's Mansion 3. And I'm going to forewarn you all now, I will be spending a lot of this part of the review comparing aspects of Luigi's Mansion 3 to the other two games of the series, because my experiences with the other two games did inform my opinion on this one. Overall, I'd say both Luigi's Mansion 3 and Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon had a lot more environmental variation compared to the original game. However, world-wise, this is justified. Luigi's Mansion 1 takes place in one relatively small mansion, which, while there's a ton of rooms, none of them would seem out of place in a house this large. That, and the game's pretty short. You can beat it in about an hour if you have a good grasp on the gameplay. A lot of people suspect that Luigi's Mansion 1 is so short because it was made so that the GameCube could have a launch title that took place in the Mario universe, since what became Super Mario Sunshine wasn't ready yet. However, I've looked into it and I don't have any conclusive evidence either way. Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3 take place in multiple mansions and a skyscraping hotel, respectively, meaning that they had more wiggle room to add varied environments. Each mansion in Dark Moon felt distinct, just like how each floor in The Last Resort had its own theme while still keeping elements to remind you that you are in fact still in the hotel. Overall, Luigi's Mansion 3 had the greatest level variety out of all the games in the series, and that's a wonderful thing. Both Luigi's Mansion 1 and 3 are fairly open exploration-based games. Progression is linked to collecting either keys or elevator buttons, which are held by the bosses, and you can freely go between those floors and rooms you've already gained access to. The stories of all three games are pretty linear, but 1 and 3 allow you to really explore the environments and appreciate all the work that went into their designs. And these games encourage exploration since both games have collectibles that affect your overall score, which affects your ending rank in both games. Compared to the other two games, Dark Moon feels far too linear. Instead of being able to freely explore the mansions at your own pace, you can only explore the mansions on missions, which affect which rooms you're able to access each time you visit. It doesn't matter how far you get in the game. If you're on a mission where you can't go into that room, you can't go into that room. In general, this is the major point that makes Dark Moon feel like the outlier for Luigi's Mansion games, because while all the games in the series have very linear stories, Dark Moon is the only one where I feel like I'm being railroaded along the plot, since there's few if any side objectives. One of the most notable features of the Luigi's Mansion game was the Portrait Ghosts, a series of mini-boss ghosts, each with a different method of making themselves open to capture with your poltergust. This made them all feel unique, even if only two of them were actual bosses with cutscenes and the like, since Colossus and King Boo took up the other two boss slots for the game, and while they are technically portrait ghosts, they're not as interesting, and to me they just don't count. You can come across these portrait ghosts just while exploring. No cutscene, no fanfare, just a puzzle presented waiting to be solved. And you got a different image for the boss in EGAD's gallery depending on how well you did in their boss fight. In fact, there were even a couple of bosses that you didn't need to capture at all. You could have just left them alone, and you could have still finished the game. Luigi's Mansion 2 departed from the formula with the Possessors, big ghosts who possessed objects that you had to kick them out of before you could try and catch them. While it meant that none of the boss fights felt identical, they were pretty stale compared to the first game. There were other minor bosses too, such as the Three Sisters, but their designs didn't really stand out compared to the other ghosts in that game. So overall, it was just kind of, meh. Now, with Luigi's Mansion 3, it's returned to form as far as boss design goes. Each boss has its own unique methods of defeat, and they all had distinct personalities that made them fun to fight. My main gripe is that in this game, unlike the previous two, you can't learn more about the ghosts because there's no lore blurbs. When you're looking at them later in EGAT's bumper, I want my ghost backstories back, Nintendo.
I desire knowledge.
Luigi's Mansion games have always had a pretty good amount of collectibles. Most of them are effectively coins, however, unlike typical Mario fare, they come in all shapes and sizes. You have the standard Mario coins, but you also have bills and gold bars, each having their own distinct sound when they appear and when you collect them. And then there's the gems. Luigi's Mansion 3 took a unique approach to this compared to the other games in the series. Each floor's gems have their own unique shape, such as swords from McFright's floor and even film reels for Morty the Director's floor. If you're trying to hurry along the plot, a fun distraction can be to go back to previously cleared floors to find the gems you missed the first go-around. And it's not an arduous process to go back to the plot, should you want to go back to progressing the story. However, there is a point in the game where you can no longer go back, so be wary of that. Alright, now that we've gone over how Luigi's Mansion 3 compares to the rest of the games in the series, let's go over some of my gripes with Luigi's Mansion 3. For the most part, Luigi's Mansion 3 has pretty good controls. They make sense, there's not really an issue, except for one little gripe, and this has been an issue in all three games. The controls whenever you have to use the poltergust to shoot a projectile at anything. It's incredibly hard to aim and shoot when your point of view isn't at a fixed point on the character's body. However, I will give points for this. Unlike previous games in the series, they do give you a little target reticule, so you can see whereabout you're aiming. It doesn't really excuse it, but at least it shows they were making an attempt to address it, so, you know, credit where credit is due. All three games have backtracking portions, and, save for Luigi's Mansion 1, it's been implemented very poorly. Luigi's Mansion 3 does it 4 times. 3 of which are because of this furry
Little bastard.
I adore animals. I love cats, but slamming this stupid furball's face into the ground repeatedly was far more gratifying than it had any right being. In fact, I have a theory that this whole Polterkitty subplot was just to make us all forget that this guy, Polterpup, was the reason you have to backtrack in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. The last time is because EGAD decided it'd be a good idea to send an unarmed Toad to the boiler room to retrieve a Poltergust upgrade that he could have just sent Luigi, the person currently in possession of said Poltergust, to get instead. But no, instead of giving Luigi a call and saying, "Hey Luigi, there's an upgrade for the Poltergust down in the boiler room. I need you to go get it." No, instead he sends a Toad, who then gets cornered, requiring Luigi to go down to the
Basement anyway.
And, to add insult to injury, the upgrade you get is only used for progression once. All the other times you can use it are optional. That little trip would have been just slightly less aggravating if the upgrade was worth the time investment to get it. In real life, backtracking happens. I get that. Sometimes you forget your keys, sometimes you forget an errand you have to run and you have to go all the way the opposite direction of where you want to go. But most of the time, in a video game, backtracking is incredibly aggravating to the player. Are you going back to an old area because you personally want to find anything you might have missed the first time around? That's all well and good. Going back because you have to chase the stupid ghost cat, or your mentor making a bad call that he just can't be arsed to fix himself? Terrible. Backtracking is used to pad out a game's playtime. I get the motive. I get why they did it, probably. But here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that even without the backtracking, Luigi's Mansion 3 is already the longest game in the series. So already there's no reason to put it in. It padded the game time at the expense of user satisfaction. This one's really just a gripe because I like this feature in the first game. Why was the scan feature removed after Luigi's Mansion 1? I want it back. You could go into the first person and scan the portrait ghosts to get an idea of how to beat them. And if you scanned objects in the room, Luigi would have a short little internal monologue about it. And that kind of fleshed him out a bit as a character. I like little touches like that. Bring it back, Nintendo. Please. Most of the power-ups you get in the game are used pretty regularly, and you get pretty much all of them early game. Then there's the Super Suction. As previously stated, you only use it once in the game to progress, and you can only use it in fixed spots, and then all you'll get with it is a gem at most. I mean, we couldn't even get one time where Luigi uses the Super Suction to clear out a room of ghosts in seconds? That'd be hilarious, but no. Instead, we get to use this upgrade that's been hyped up by EGAD for wanton property damage. That's it, and that's all of it. What do I think of Luigi's Mansion 3 overall? Honestly, other than the previously mentioned gripes, I loved Luigi's Mansion 3. No game is going to be perfect, and the only sin this game has committed that I just can't let go of is the backtracking segments. It's a fun little cartoony romp in line with typical Mario games, but with a little added darkness befitting the game's premise. So, what's the game's overall rating? Let's get into some criteria. Gameplay-wise, I'll rate Luigi's Mansion a 3 out of 5. The controls are pretty intuitive, except for the shooting controls, so I have to dock a little bit of points for that. Story-wise, I'll rate it at a 4.75 out of 5 because the ever-deepening feud between Luigi and King Boo is always a fun watch. The boss ghosts were endlessly entertaining,
Except for you, Clem.
and it's a Luigi's Mansion game, so I only expect maybe a slightly deeper narrative than a typical Mario game. And I wasn't disappointed. The only reason it's not a 5 is because King Boo's end goal is a little stale. I mean, at least Bowser changes it up every now and again, while King Boo is always trying to imprison people in paintings. As far as replayability goes, I'll be honest, it'll be a while before I return to playing Luigi's Mansion 3. It's both a bit too long and too linear to really warrant a repeat playthrough, unless you're trying to speedrun it, or are really into the multiplayer aspect, which I didn't play. I'll give it a 2 out of 5 rating just because I might pick it up again if I'm in the mood for it. And lengthwise, as I previously stated, this is probably the longest game in the Luigi's Mansion series, and if it weren't for the unforgivably prevalent backtracking, the game would actually be about perfect length for the type of game it is. So, I'll rate it a 4 out of 5. Alright, And calculating all of those different aspect ratings out, my accounting department told me that the scores I gave out averaged to about 3.43 out of 5. My attachment to the series makes me want to rate it higher, but the board of directors tells me I need to be somewhat objective about things. This is definitely a game I'd recommend, especially for the Luigi fan in your life. Tune in next time for our review of Little Nightmares. Have a good evening.
If you didn't catch it earlier, Mr. Cawthorne stated that these reviews are based around the games he finishes on his Twitch streams. If you want to see him play through these games, watch him live on Twitch Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 p.m. MDT. You can also watch VODs that aren't on Twitch anymore via the playlists here on YouTube. The full playthrough of Luigi's Mansion 3 is on the playlist linked on the end card here. Want to recommend games for Mr. Cawthorne to stream and possibly review? We have a corporate Discord server set up, and one of the forum threads is for game suggestions. You can also follow Mr. Cawthorne on various social media sites, the links are on the channel page. Remember, at Corvid Communications, we won't leave you eating crow.